$9 billion. Self-made, youngest female billionaire in history. And the machine she built her entire empire on, it never actually worked. Not once. This is the story of Elizabeth Holmes, the woman who convinced the smartest people in the world that one drop of blood could change medicine forever. And the terrifying part? Patients were trusting their real diagnoses to a device that was, quite literally, faking it.
The Prodigy. Washington, D.C., 1984. Elizabeth Holmes was born into a family that worshipped ambition. Her mother's side traced back to the founders of Fleischmann's Yeast. Her father bounced through government jobs and energy companies. Money came and went, but the pressure to achieve, that never left. I want to be a billionaire by the time I'm 23. Most kids want a bike. Elizabeth wanted an empire.
At age 9, she wrote a letter to her father describing what she really wanted out of life. Not toys, not vacations. What I really want out of life is to discover something new, something mankind didn't know was possible to do. 9 years old. She studied Mandarin as a teenager so she could do business in China before most of her classmates could do algebra. She enrolled at Stanford to study chemical engineering, and within her first year, she was already spending summers in a lab, obsessed not with grades, but with legacy. Her idol wasn't a scientist. It was Steve Jobs. She read his biography until the pages fell apart. She started wearing black turtlenecks. She started lowering her voice, an octave, sometimes 2, in meetings. Some classmates thought it was strange. Elizabeth thought it was branding. Sophomore year, she went to her professor with an idea. A patch that could test blood and adjust medication doses in real time. He told her, kindly, that the science didn't support it yet. That doesn't matter. I'm going to build it anyway. At 19, she dropped out of Stanford. She took her college tuition fund, and instead of finishing her chemical engineering degree, she founded a company. She called it Real-Time Cures. Later, she'd rename it Theranos, a blend of therapy and diagnosis. Nobody asked the one question that mattered yet. Does it actually work? That question would take 15 years and a few thousand ruined patient results to finally get answered. The vision. The pitch was almost too perfect. 1 drop of blood from a simple finger prick, run through a sleek little machine called the Edison. Hundreds of tests, cholesterol, cancer markers, infections, all from that single drop, all in minutes, all for a fraction of the price of traditional labs. Doctor, imagine never having to draw 4 vials of blood from a scared child again. Imagine catching cancer before a single symptom shows up. That's what we're building. Investors didn't ask for peer-reviewed data. They asked for a seat on the board. Because in the room, Elizabeth wasn't just persuasive. She was magnetic. Piercing blue eyes that never blinked during a pitch. That deep, practiced voice. A black turtleneck that whispered Steve Jobs without ever saying his name out loud. She recruited a board that looked less like a health tech startup and more like a presidential cabinet. Former secretaries of state, former secretaries of defense, a retired 4-star general. Not one of them had a background in blood diagnostics, but their names did something more valuable than expertise ever could. They did credibility by association. By 2013, Theranos partnered with Walgreens to bring wellness centers into real pharmacies across the country. Real patients, real blood draws, real medical decisions, being made on a machine that, behind the scenes, barely functioned. The valuation exploded. $4 billion, then $7, then $9 billion. Forbes put her on the cover. Time named her one of the most influential people on Earth. Fortune ran a headline calling her the next Steve Jobs. She was 30 years old, dressed exactly like him, speaking exactly like him, selling a dream exactly like he once had.
Except his products worked. The Empire. Inside Theranos headquarters, the walls were glass, the culture was cult-like, and the secrecy was absolute. Employees signed brutal non-disclosure agreements. Departments were split so no one could see the whole picture. If you asked too many questions, you didn't last long. Why can't the engineering team talk to the lab team? Compartmentalization keeps our IP safe. Or maybe it just keeps the truth in pieces small enough that nobody can put it back together. Elizabeth ran the company alongside her boyfriend, Sunny Balwani, nearly 2 decades her senior, who she'd installed as company president. Behind closed doors, employees described him as controlling, explosive, feared. In public, nobody knew they were even a couple. Here's the part investors never saw. The Edison machine, the miracle device supposedly running hundreds of tests off a single drop of blood, it barely worked for a dozen. It choked on temperature changes. It produced wildly inconsistent results. Some tests came back so unreliable that engineers quietly joked the machine was basically a very expensive coin flip.
So, what did Theranos do when investors or journalists wanted a live demonstration? Sir, right this way. We'll draw your blood and the Edison will process it in real time. Except, often, it didn't. Employees later testified that during many demos, the blood sample was secretly swapped, run instead on modified commercial machines from other companies. Or the results shown on screen were preloaded, rehearsed, a magic trick disguised as medicine. The audience saw a miracle. What actually happened was closer to a card trick at a birthday party, except the stakes were people's cancer diagnoses.
The machine that didn't work. Inside the walls, the cracks were already spreading. Lab directors quit in protest. One scientist raised concerns about inaccurate results reaching real patients and was fired within days. Quality control reports were reportedly altered before being shown to regulators. When an employee flagged that Theranos was running the vast majority of its actual patient tests on traditional third-party machines instead of the revolutionary Edison it was famous for, he was told in no uncertain terms to keep quiet. This isn't just imprecise. Patients are making treatment decisions off this. A false positive could send someone into unnecessary chemo. A false negative could let something fatal go undetected. That's not a bug. That's a body count waiting to happen. But questioning the technology at Theranos wasn't treated like due diligence. It was treated like betrayal. The whistleblowers. Enter Tyler Shultz, 26 years old, a Stanford grad, and, awkwardly for Elizabeth, the grandson of George Shultz, former U.S. Secretary of State and a Theranos board member. Tyler joined the company believing in the mission completely. Then he saw the data. Failed quality control tests. Results that should have triggered a shutdown, quietly buried instead. He raised the alarm internally. He was ignored. He raised it again. He was threatened with a lawsuit by the company's lawyers, personally, by his own grandfather's business partners, at his own grandfather's dinner table.
You're either with us or you're a problem. Tyler chose to be a problem. Alongside another young employee, Erika Cheung, who had also seen the falsified quality controls firsthand, Tyler became an anonymous source for a Wall Street Journal reporter named John Carreyrou. For months, Carreyrou dug through leaked documents, patient complaints, and terrified former staff who'd finally agreed to talk, off the record, then on it. In October 2015, the story broke. The headline alone detonated the myth. Theranos technology didn't work the way the company claimed. The $9 billion valuation, built almost entirely on charisma and a black turtleneck, was built on a machine that could barely run a handful of tests reliably.
The collapse. Once the myth cracked, it didn't slow down. It collapsed all at once. The SEC opened an investigation. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services found Theranos labs posed immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety, as serious a warning as regulators can issue. Walgreens shut down every wellness center. Partners fled. The board that once lent her legitimacy now scrambled to distance themselves from her entirely. In 2018, Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balvani were criminally indicted for wire fraud, accused of knowingly deceiving investors, doctors, and patients for years. Her $9 billion fortune evaporated to functionally zero overnight.
Elizabeth Holmes always said she wanted to discover something new, something mankind didn't know was possible. She did discover something, just not the thing she promised. She discovered exactly how far confidence alone can carry a lie before the blood test finally and literally cannot lie back.